All right, so hi everybody. I'm Rachel Bleiman. I'm here with Wilson Diaz, presenting on our experiences as undergraduate students learning social engineering from a computer crime course that we took together at Temple University. So to start us off, we're just going to tell you a little bit about ourselves. Wilson, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Wilson Diaz. I'm currently a rising senior at Temple University, majoring in information science and technology. And I'm also pursuing a certificate in computer security and digital forensics. And this summer, I just started as an intern at Cigna, and I'm going to be doing full stack web engineering for the summer.
And I'm Rachel Bleiman. I just graduated Temple University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I also had minors in psychology and information science and technology. For the past year or so, I've been working as a research assistant for the professor of this computer crime course, actually, Dr. Anshul Rege. And in the fall, I'll be doing a PhD program at Temple for criminal justice. Wilson and I first met in this computer crime course that we took together, and for both of us, it was our first time learning about social engineering. So on the agenda for today, first we're going to give a brief overview of the computer crime class, what its focus and structure was like. We'll tell you a little bit about the 3 course projects that the class focused around before Wilson goes into more detail on one of the class projects about shoulder surfing. And then I detail my experiences in another of the class projects called Terms and Conditions that focused on pretexting. And then at the end, we'll have time to answer some questions. Okay, so we took this computer crime class in the spring of 2019, so just about a year ago. It's an upper level CJ course. And what's different about this class is usually upper level CJ classes don't really have other majors in it, but this class was very multidisciplinary. About half the class was from liberal arts, mostly CJ majors, criminal justice majors. But we also had 13 students from the College of Science and Technology, mostly computer science or information science technology majors. Then we also had 2 business students and 1 undeclared student. I guess they just thought the class sounded fun. As you can see in these pictures, we did a lot of group work. We met outside of class a lot, and everybody just had a good time. Wilson.
Yep. So just like Rachel mentioned, we both took this course in spring 2019, and it was taught by Dr. Anshul Rege in the Department of Criminal Justice, and it's an upper level elective there. So for the computer science students, this was one of the required courses that we need to complete the certificate in computer security and digital forensics. And for that reason, most of us would have never planned to take a criminal justice course otherwise. And coming from a technical background, I at first thought that computer crimes were all about hacking and malicious software, finding vulnerabilities and these huge systems. But as we learned in the course, as we learned about all the different cyber threats throughout this course, we learned that really the biggest vulnerability in any system is the people involved with it. So lectures in general are great for conveying information and providing structure to a class, but personally, I learned the most by doing. So I'm really used to hands-on learning approaches, and my computer science professors are always encouraging us to build projects in our spare time, implement what we learn, get tips to learn what's happening in industry. So I was kind of worried that this class would be it's like a ton of reading, but it actually turned out to be a great experiential learning experience where that was the main focus. So the course was structured around 3 course projects in which we practice social engineering firsthand. And so as you saw in the previous slide, the class was mainly composed of students from both liberal arts and science and tech. So the class catered to various majors, and everyone was able to bring certain strengths to the table in our projects, no matter their backgrounds. And not only did we learn how computer crimes have human elements in them, we also learned that our disciplines had more overlap than we thought. Slide. So our 3 main projects focused on OSINT, shoulder surfing, and pretexting. The OSINT project had 2 parts, and in the first one we needed to use clues to find specific websites using different search engines and keywords, and used content from these sites to then generate latitude and longitude coordinates for part 2, which was the physical portion of the project. Different teams were tasked with finding physical targets. I remember one team had to find like a painting in our student center. My team specifically was tasked with finding a professor's office in the College of Engineering just from his picture. And so we actually found his name online, but there wasn't really like a staff directory or anything showing where his office was. So we just started asking random students in the lobby of the College of Engineering if they knew him. Until luckily one guy did actually know him and led us to his office. And it was pretty funny because, so to complete the assignment, we just needed to take a picture with his like nameplate outside his office, but he was actually in there. And he was very confused when he saw us taking pictures with his nameplate. And he didn't know about this assignment at all. But he was a great sport after we explained everything to him, and he even offered to take a picture with us. So there he is down there. For the shoulder surfing project, which you can see in that middle picture, we were challenged to break up into teams and try to capture each other's screens with picture and video without our targets noticing. And for our final pre-texting project, we were challenged to get random subjects to unknowingly sign a terms and conditions document without reading it and inadvertently agreeing to some ridiculous term that we included in there. And in this presentation, we'll cover the shoulder surfing and pre-texting assignments in more depth, starting with the shoulder surfing one. So as mentioned before, this was a group activity in which we formed 8 teams. Most were made up of students from liberal arts and science and tech majors, so a mix. And our goal was to shoulder surf the screens of rival team members without them noticing that they were caught. The captures we took needed to be relatively clear. We should be able to determine who the captured student was, and we needed to report who they were in our debriefing presentation. So we needed to provide their name and their team number. And we also needed to provide an image showing the shoulder surfing taking place. So an action shot is a picture in which you can see the attacker actually capturing the target screen. And it's also available for download at that link down there. So the project went on for 2 weeks. It was limited to on-campus only. We couldn't follow anyone home, and we couldn't target rival students from our class. We completed ethics training beforehand, and we were prohibited from capturing any screens whenever sensitive info was up on them, like email and banking information. And we also agreed to not post any pictures online or brag when we caught someone. So this kind of kept the game friendly and avoided discouraging anyone from giving up on the challenge. At the end of the 2 weeks, we presented our captures and failures to the whole class, and we all described our experiences, and that was the most fun part because no one had known if they had gotten targeted or not up until this point. So here's my capture. I guess I'll let it play first. So just to give the story behind this video. One day after class, I was walking to the library to get some studying done, and I noticed 2 of the classmates walking ahead of me. So lo and behold, they were also heading to the library. So I just followed them in, waited for them to settle down, and luckily for me, they sat right next to each other, each on a big iMac. And since I didn't have any teammates with me, I decided the video would be the best approach for getting both of them at once, while including myself in the shot. And I think this was around midterms because I remember the library being really packed, and I got some stares from the staff and the students that were there studying. But the 2 students that I captured luckily didn't notice me at all. And on here, we see Rachel's capture.
So this capture was not as clean or easy as Wilson's was, but I was very proud of this capture. I had been targeting this same student for basically the whole 2-week period. As Wilson mentioned, we had to have the target's name and team number for it to count, and I didn't really know many people in this class, but for some reason I found out this girl's name and team number, so I kind of stuck to her the whole time. But I got a lot of failures before I was able to get this partial success. I had followed her around campus multiple times, sometimes for 20 minutes, just tailing behind her at a distance, and she just wouldn't ever take her phone out. It was really frustrating, and I would follow her until she left campus because that was the boundary. And then it wasn't until one of the last days of the project, the 2 weeks were coming to an end, and my group was a little nervous because we hadn't had many successful shots yet, and the competition was almost over. So I got this one right after class. It was kind of hard to see in this video, but you could see one of her team members try and jump in to block the shot, but they weren't able to block it. This team member was on Wilson's team, so I was able to get one of them. I think she saw me. She saw that I captured her, so she wasn't surprised to see her face on the debriefing video, but I think it still counted as a capture.
Yeah, luckily, I never got caught. Into the 2 weeks, we came together as a class to like give our debriefing presentations, talk about our experiences, and of course, show off who we were able to actually catch off guard. So these are the main strategies that most teams reported using. Combining video and selfies made it a lot easier to get a clear image of the target than having to kind of try to get a good angle with a picture. Taking a picture really quickly without being noticed was pretty hard. So another strategy was getting up during class, and we can play this first video here. So this student would pretend to go up for a bathroom break at the beginning of class, and he would actually stick his phone in his shirt pocket so he could secretly scan the room as he walked out. I thought that was really smart. And there he is. And then the second video shows that, so this student was using a strategic position in the back of the class. He was able to scope out the whole room while it being difficult to get him to. So there he is with the wall behind him. And then this last image is just a picture showing the power of selfies. You can get yourself and your capture in the same picture. So many students shared other classes with rival team members as well. So that provided them another location where they were guaranteed to meet with their potential targets. And for those that didn't share any classes, light stalking was also an option, kind of like what I did. So following people around sometimes paid off, as we saw with Rachel's story, even if you have many failures beforehand. But students would often wear inconspicuous clothing and hats to try to blend in and not be noticed while following people. And keeping devices off and away during class was honestly the best defensive measure, since it gave attackers as little chances as possible to get us. And similarly, groups would try to sit together, and seats against the walls and near the back of the classroom were highly sought after as strategic positions, as we saw.
Yeah, as Wilson mentioned, some students had a lot of classes with other students in the class. I was one of those students. There was a group of maybe 5 to 10 of us who had another class together on the same day, same semester. And that caused some trouble in that class. There was only about, I'd say, 40 students in the other criminal justice class, but I'd say 5 to 10 of us were also from this class. So when we went to our other class, they would all want to sit against the wall or in the very top row, but it made it a little weird because we had that class in a huge lecture hall, even though there weren't that many students in the class. So usually the students would take up the first, 3 or 4 rows. But during this 2-week period, all of those students from the computer crime class would go up to the very top row, probably about 20 rows of space between them and the next people, and just sit against the wall, the very top row. Our professor in that class was so confused, but he never said anything to us and just let it go. For that whole 2-week period, there was just a huge gap between the rest of the class and everybody at the top row, and the professor would have to scream to talk to them because it was so big. So that technique was definitely used by a lot of students.
So here are some of the challenges that we faced as a class. So Rachel mentioned, like, this was a class with over 40 students, so it was really hard to remember anyone's face and name. And it really became an issue when you were not in class and you were looking out for people to shoulder surf and defend against. So some people got over that by sticking to one person that they knew, kind of like what Rachel did with my teammate. And we also needed to report who we had gotten in our debriefing presentation for the capture the count. So my team got around this by using the solution of searching for names from the class roster online, and then cross-referencing that with the groups and social media profiles that would pop up. So we kind of try to put a face to the name that way. And the physical limitations of the project was also an issue. So lots of students live in off-campus housing, and it would be really stressful to follow someone around campus for a while just to have them go out of bounds, like what happened to Rachel. Keep using her as an example. But speed was also a necessity to try to get someone while they were using their device and avoiding being captured themselves. So there was often a trade-off between speed and image quality, but using videos was a good solution for that as well. One of the hardest things about this project was that it was going on even outside of class time. So we were all fair game to be captured as long as we were on campus. And this made it very difficult to get work done in our other classes in public spaces like the library, computer labs. And everyone was on high alert for being caught off guard. So they would try as hard as possible to not bring out any of their devices. And this just made it a very stressful time for all of us because this was also going around the same time as our midterms. So I lived through this next point personally here. So calling it light stalking doesn't make it any less creepy. Lots of students felt hesitant to take pictures of each other because it is kind of creepy, and you feel like even more of a creep if someone who's not in the class and doesn't know what's going on catches you in the act. It took me a while to get over those stares I got in the library, and I thought that the next time I would walk in there, there'd for sure be a picture of me on the wall saying, you know, watch out for this guy. And then if we show these images here, we have two. This is a capture my teammate Louis got of one of our classmates, and on the bottom, that's an action shot that I took of him getting her. And we were really proud of this one because it came out great, but we just got really lucky with that one. It's hard enough to capture someone on your own, so coordinating with like one of your teammates to get you and the target in a clear picture is even harder. So some of the takeaways we took from this project, we learned that shoulder surfing people is pretty easy to do without your target noticing, especially when they're in crowded areas like cafeterias, libraries, or even on like public transportation. So of course we were all on high alert while the project was going on, but that just made us more aware of how we didn't really care about our screens being viewed prior to this experience. And many groups reported being more conscious about this and being doubly sure to not check sensitive materials like online banking in public. And in terms of the project itself, we found that using videos and selfies covered both getting the action shot and getting a clear image really well. I was already aware of invasions of privacy from big companies like Google tracking you online, but I had never thought about how someone could do something similar on a much smaller scale just by looking at what you're doing on your screen. And this project was great for all students because it was a low-tech approach to social engineering. You just needed to know how to work a phone camera. But this is also what makes it really scary. So anyone can shoulder surf. Not only do you have to worry about hacks on companies that hold your data or a keylogger being installed in your system, anyone can record you inputting a password and steal your keystrokes. And all in all, this project made me like a lot more paranoid when it comes to using my devices in public.
Okay, so the next project that we have for this class was called the Terms and Conditions Project, and it focused on pretexting. So it was another group activity, basically the same groups as the last two projects. And the objective of this project was to see if people actually read terms and conditions documents before signing them. So each group had to create their own pretext, some product or service, and try to get targets to sign up for it. So on the right here, this was a flyer that my group made. Our pretext was that we were working for the university bookstore, and if people filled out this survey, they could enter into a raffle to win money to buy textbooks. So each group also had to come up with their own one-page terms and conditions document. But the catch was that within that document, they had to embed some funny or silly sentence so that if somebody reading the document saw it and they read it, they would not sign it. I forgot to mention that this project is also available for download if anybody's interested at sites.temple.edu/care/downloads. So this project occurred over 2 class periods. All of the preparation for it happened with the groups meeting on their own time to develop their pretexts, come up with any flyers like you just saw on the last page. But the implementation of the pretext occurred during 2 class periods during 1 week, 1.5 hours each day. And each team went to a different location on campus to try and get people to sign their document. All the students in the class had to complete ethics training to do this because we were working with human subjects. And then additionally, after we had the targets sign our terms and conditions document, we then had to explain to them the true nature of the project and how the pretext wasn't real. After we did that, we had to get them to sign an ethics consent form so that we can interview them and use their participation for this project. Then after both of these class periods were done, each group made a debriefing presentation and video. One of them you'll be able to see in a few more slides. Then the groups also made a formal research report where we had to outline all of our findings, stuff about the interviews, just everything from the project. Okay, so these were all of the pretexts that the groups came up with. And then on the right, you can see how many successes and failures they had, basically how many people they got to sign it versus how many people they talked to who wouldn't sign it. So these two here, the top one, Win Free Books, that was my group's pretext. And then the Help with the Course project was Wilson's group's pretext. And you can see both of our groups were pretty successful. My group had 18 people sign our document, and none of them refused to sign. None of them saw our embedded sentence. So they all signed it without any problem. But then Wilson's group was also pretty successful. They had 15 people sign it, but they did have one person see their embedded statement and refuse to sign. Among the other pretexts, we saw some general themes. So there was a bunch that had to do with people winning stuff. I guess everybody loves, the chance to win something for free. We also had a couple groups offering or asking for help. But among all the groups, the most successful one by far was this pretext. And their pretext was to start a spa center with therapy dogs. So they had to get people to sign it, sort of like a petition sort of thing. They had 50 people sign their document, and not a single one of them read it or saw their embedded statement. That's more than double any of the successes from any of the other groups. You can see them in this picture here. They actually brought dogs in, which may have contributed to why they were so successful. Okay, so as I mentioned, we were allowed to bring props in, make our pretext more believable. People brought in food they were giving away, donuts, coffee, pretzels. People chose to bring in things to make them look more official. Like my group brought, we printed out those flyers. We also wore university clothing to make us look like we were actually working for the university bookstore, like we said we were. Some groups also brought in tables or clipboards, which, looking back, I wish my group did that because we just had people sign it on a bench and it was very unprofessional. Then, of course, the winning group brought in dogs. How can anybody resist? Okay. And then these were the embedded sentences that each of the groups came up with. So these sentences were embedded in the terms and conditions document. And the point was that if anybody saw these in their terms and conditions document, they would not sign. Some of my favorite ones are these. You must shave off your eyebrows and dye your hair pink. You agree to howl at the moon each night in front of the bell tower, which is just a statue on campus. That was Wilson's groups. Another funny one was you'll provide a sacrificial goat, but then you will get on all fours and bark like a dog. My group's wasn't very funny. It was you must wear a striped sweater on Sundays. I guess my group just wasn't creative, but I like the other groups a lot more. Then the winning group had their embedded sentence say, you will Millie Rock in front of your next class. If you're not familiar, Millie Rock is a dance. They actually had one of the people who signed this follow through a little bit and did Millie Rock, not in front of the class, but in front of them on video, which you'll be able to see soon. Okay, so this was the debriefing video of the winning team. Unfortunately, the sound isn't working, so I'll just walk you through it a little bit. So again, they brought in their dogs to use as props. That really got people to, it struck attention to them. It got people to want to come over and talk to them, but then it also distracted people. So when they were signing the document, they were focusing more on petting the dog and didn't really care about what they were reading, it sounded like. And you can see too, they didn't have clipboards or tables, so they also had to lean on things to write on. So that was a few things that the groups didn't really account for. Yeah, so that was a survey they had the people fill out to do the spa center, and then they had to fill in the terms and conditions document afterwards. So that's someone doing the Millie Rock. And in the video, you'll be able to see them dancing too. Unfortunately, you won't be able to hear the music behind it. Okay, and that's a video of them disclosing the nature of the project and getting them to sign the ethics consent form right here. And here's the Millie Rock.
And that was a professor, right, Rachel? Am I remembering that correctly?
I believe so. I'm not positive. I think so. But she signed it and she followed through. Okay. So we also had some findings from all of this. As I said earlier, we interviewed the targets after we disclosed to them that our pretexts weren't real and it was all for a class project. So then when we interviewed them, we asked them questions about why they didn't read the terms and conditions document and if they would in the future. And here's some of those results we had. So 5 of the 8 groups had a lot of their targets say that they didn't sign the terms and conditions because it was too time consuming. Or they didn't read the terms and conditions, sorry, because it was too time consuming, or they were in a rush, which seemed accurate because a lot of people that my group asked said that they couldn't stop to read it or sign it because they were already late to class. 5 of the 8 groups also had people say that the language in the terms and conditions document is too confusing, so they just don't read it. 4 of the 8 groups had people who say that they just simply trusted us because we're students, we look like students, and they wouldn't think that we were up to anything, fishy. 3 of the 8 groups had people say that they just didn't care what's in there and they don't care what they're signing up for as long as they get the product or service that they, think they're getting. And then 1 of the 8 groups had students who said that they only read terms and conditions when it's for important documents like, student loans or leases. If it's for something less important, like any of our pretexts, basically, they just don't care enough to sign it or to read it. Then another group had students who said that they felt empathy for fellow students. There often times classes make people go out and try to get students fill out surveys for this or that. So if any of the pretexts were about helping, a lot of the students may have felt, they just wanted to help. So they signed it for that reason. Okay, and then we also recorded some of the reactions that the targets had, finding out that basically we lied to them. In the video, the people finding out basically laughed. They thought it was funny, and 5 of the 8 groups had most of their targets have the same reaction. They thought it was funny. They laughed it off. 3 of the 8 groups had a lot of the targets be shocked and surprised, while 3 of the 8 groups also had a lot of the targets feel really angry and they did not like being tricked. Okay, and then we also asked the targets if they would be reading terms and conditions in the future, since we pointed out to them the embedded statement and they explained to us why they didn't read it. But only 2 of the groups had a lot of students say that they would read terms and conditions in the future, while the other 6 groups had their students, or the targets, say that they still won't read, even after being tricked. Okay, there were a lot of challenges to this project. For, I think most of us, it was our first time doing anything like this, so it was a completely new experience. One of the hardest challenges that we faced was just trying to get people to talk to us. In this picture here, this is my group. You see they're holding signs. We did a lot of, yelling at people walking by to try and attract attention, but most people would just speed walk by and kind of not make eye contact, because at least on a college campus, once you make eye contact with somebody, you kind of get roped into talking to them. So most people were in a rush. They wouldn't stop, wouldn't even look at us. So that was a big challenge, just to get people to come talk to us. Once we did get people to talk to us, though, we also experienced some unanticipated events. Our pretexts weren't always the most developed. So sometimes the targets that we were talking to would ask us further questions about our pretext, and they would ask us about things that we hadn't really prepared for. For example, again, my group said we were working for the Temple bookstore and we were doing a free raffle for textbook money. And one of the people we were talking to was asking us about our jobs and how we get paid and if we're, student workers and this and that. And nobody knew what to say. We all looked around awkwardly at each other for a few seconds until somebody jumped in and answered it. And then the rest of us just kind of nodded along in agreement in the background. And that happened a few times. After the first day, we decided we should talk a bit more and try and develop it further so we could be better prepared for the next day. But we found really that if we just try and let one person take the lead and nobody else contradicts them, it would make us look more credible. Another challenge we faced it was the gender dynamics. So sometimes the groups would split into subgroups, half the group goes here, half the group goes there. Whenever there was an all-male group, they tended to have more difficulty recruiting targets. It just seemed like people felt more comfortable talking to the girls, or at least if there was at least one girl in the group, they were able to bring in more targets. Okay, another really big challenge was getting the targets to sign off on the ethics consent form. So, as I mentioned, they had to sign the terms and conditions form. And then after they signed that, we told them that pretext wasn't real, we disclosed the true nature. But then in order to interview them and use their participation in the research, we had to have them sign off on the ethics consent form. And people were a little suspicious of us at that point. We had just tricked them into signing the terms and conditions form. So they didn't really want to sign this ethics consent form because they thought we were trying to trick them again. Some people went through and read the entire thing word for word because they'd learned their lesson from the previous time, but Oddly enough, some people still barely skimmed it and they just signed it off. I guess they really just trusted us. And then a final challenge that we faced was dealing with the target's emotions. We felt a little bad lying to these people at times, especially when a lot of our pretexts were supposed to benefit them in some way, and it made them really excited. So then when we had to disclose that it's not real, we just knew we were about to disappoint them and make them sad or angry in some way. And it was hard we were kind of doing a sales pitch trying to get them to sign off on the terms and conditions form to begin with. And it was hard doing that when we know we're getting them excited just to break them down right afterwards. Okay, so there were a few people who read the terms and conditions document. On the left here was the one failure that Wilson's group has. And I have him on video here. He decided to read the entire terms and conditions document out loud to see if it was up to any funny business. And he obviously found the embedded sentence. And he said that he reads them because he can't trust corporations. They're trying to steal your money. On the right here was another student who found the embedded sentence. And the embedded sentence for this group was to get on all fours and bark like a dog. So you can see in this video here, as soon as he sees that, he does not sign it. Okay, so some takeaways from this project. One of the biggest takeaways is that nobody reads terms and conditions documents, it seems. Ours were only one page and people, couldn't bother reading those. So I can't imagine anybody trying to read the ones that are, pages and pages long. It also seems that when people started to read the terms and conditions form, if we jumped in and just explained verbally what it was about, they didn't bother reading it and just signed off on it right away. So if you want to trick somebody, that is a good way. Another great way to trick somebody is with dogs and free things, especially on a college campus. I don't think there's any student who could turn down either one of those. People are always looking for free things on campus and people are always giving things away. So it makes you seem pretty believable. What was great about this project is that it really required no technical skills. None of us had experience in doing this before, and we were all able to do it. The multidisciplinary teams blended together perfectly. At times, you couldn't even remember, who had what background because everybody was working together and able to complete the project well. Another key to pretexting that we found was that it's all about confidence. Even if you don't know the answer to something, if you can just pretend like you do, say it confidently, and stick with it, it makes you seem much more reliable and credible. Another takeaway was that you can't trust people just based on their appearances. A lot of the targets that we had simply signed the document because we looked like we were trusting people because we were about the same age and we were, Temple University students just like them. So all in all, learning about pretexting and social engineering this way was a much more effective way to learn than compared to a lecture. We were able to experience it firsthand from developing the pretext to executing and implementing it, and it taught us much better than any lecture could have.
Yeah, so just
Okay.
everything up.
Sorry. Okay, so this class generally just made learning social engineering a lot of fun. Like I've said, neither of us knew anything about social engineering going to this class, but the hands-on activities helped us to learn by doing, and we were able to experience social engineering rather than just learn what it is based on a lecture.
And we didn't get to talk much about the OSINT project, but it was also a really fun way to practice both the technical and physical aspects of social engineering. And it served as a nice first project to introduce us to SE in general and intelligence gathering. And as we mentioned, it's also available for downloads at sites.temple.edu.
So we both had some personal takeaways from this class, coming from, our different backgrounds. Mine is criminal justice, Wilson's from the technical background. And I learned that it's okay that I don't have all the technical skills as someone like Wilson might have. I can still be involved in cybersecurity in just as big of a role. This class actually piqued my interest and is why I started working with Dr. Rege as a research assistant in this area. And I'm overall just really glad I took this class.
And for me, since it was listed in the College of Liberal Arts, I thought the class would mostly be geared toward like reading case studies and taking quizzes and exams. But as a hands-on learner, I was really glad that it turned out to be mainly geared toward experiential learning. And this course was my first exposure to social engineering, as we mentioned, and really taught me the importance of interpersonal skills and information security. And it was one of the most unique academic experiences I've had.
Yeah, so from the perspective of any discipline, this class really emphasized the importance of the human factor in cybersecurity and how big of an impact that people have on computer crimes, just as much as any technical aspect. This class also made me much more aware and cautious of everything I do online and in person. Even if it didn't make all of our targets, like in the pretexting project, super aware, I think all of our class members are much more aware and cautious now.
All right, so thanks everyone for coming to our talk. And here we have our LinkedIn information, so if you want to connect with us. Dr. Anshul Rege's information is there as well. There's a website and her Twitter if you want to follow her.
So again, all of these projects we talked about are available for download, the complete assignment, rubric, and everything at sites.temple.edu/care/downloads. I also wanted to just mention the upcoming all-virtual social engineering Capture the Flag event that's co-organized by Temple and Layer 8. You can find all of the details at this link here, sites.temple.edu/social engineering. You can get all the details here. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thanks again for coming to our talk, and we're able to answer any questions now.